Andy, I know you just got off the phone with Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, chairman, and CEO. What's the initial reaction there?
Cohen wanted Jacob deGrom. They were obviously in on Jacob deGrom, Gary, but talking to him, as you said just a few minutes ago, he was understanding. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sounding desperate or, oh, woe is us. What he said to me on the record was, quote, I wish him well, meaning deGrom, of course. He has the right to choose his team. Now, this team, the Mets, have to move on to the next thing. So it was an acceptance of the fact that you don't always get what you want. I was told in additional reporting, Cohen's not the only person I've talked to here, of course, working this story, that Justin Verlander is front and center. That was a term that was used to me in terms of what is next for the Mets. They're also in on Carlos Rodon. They want one of those big three starters, and one of those three starters, of course, is off the board. So the vibe from Steve Cohen, Gary, was just determined to figure out the next thing to build a championship caliber team and wishing deGrom the best.
I was always of the mindset, Andy, that it was going to be Jacob deGrom going to the team that's going to pay him the most money. There was going to be no hometown discount here. But 5 years at $185 million for a guy who's going into his age 35 season and who's made just 26 starts over the last couple of years. Are you surprised at the level of that contract that Texas has ponied up for Jacob deGrom?
I am very surprised, and I'm sure that'll be the reaction around the game. They paid a premium to get him. He would have been crazy to turn that down. Nobody was going to offer him that, I'm pretty sure. That was way above the level. I mean, the question really was, is anyone going to give this guy 4 years? So the fact that he was able to get 5 and at that dollar amount, he's got to take it. The Mets would have been crazy to match it. It's a contract. It's one of those overpays that a team has to do to get a guy if they feel that way and if that's what it's going to take. But it's not rational baseball, that's for sure, to pay a pitcher with that injury history at that age that kind of money over those kinds of years. I mean, really, you could have made the case that he was a 1 or 2 year kind of guy, kind of a make good contract. I know he meant a lot to Mets fans and to the franchise, but the state of his career over the past couple of years has been give him a 1 year deal with some incentives. That was never going to happen, but the industry is going to be shocked that it was 5.
Well, he certainly was pretty adamant throughout the course of the season. He was going to opt out at the end of the year. That was even early on in spring training. He made that pretty clear that he was going to opt out when his contract was available to opt out at the end of the season. But here's a guy, Andy. He jumped onto the scene back in 2014. He was the Rookie of the Year. He helped lead the Mets to the World Series in 2015, won a couple of Cy Young Awards in 2018 and 2019. I think a lot of Met fans were hoping this was a guy who was going to begin his career and end his career in a Mets uniform. How significant a moment is this in Mets history with this news tonight?
You know, Gary, I think, I'm reminded of when we were on the air live in 2011 when Jose Reyes signed with the Marlins, and it was a similar question. It felt like a big moment. It felt like a tough moment or a sad moment. And I'm sure, I'll break from this comment for a second to speak on a more emotional level. I'm speaking analytically by saying, oh, he wouldn't have gotten 2 years or 3 years. I understand there's people out there that are attached to this guy and kids out there that have grown up watching him pitch. And there's that level of things where it's absolutely going to be a gut punch. And that's a very legitimate feeling for someone who's invested their emotional energy and time into the Mets. That aside, I think this will end up being a really good thing for the franchise because he was a pitcher who had been breaking down over the past couple of years, and the Mets were poised to overpay him, and now they have that money to spread around and perhaps pay players that are going to give them a little bit more of a sure thing in terms of pursuing that championship.
So you mentioned a moment ago Justin Verlander, and again, I think he will be top of mind and front and center right here, along with Carlos Rodon. But Brandon Nimo now is out there. I would think that would be a further premium to bring Brandon Nimo back. And I just wonder, Andy, a guy across town who's looking for a major deal by the name of Aaron Judge, I wonder with deGrom leaving now, if that puts a guy like Aaron Judge into play with the New York Mets. What do you think?
I don't see it. The Mets have never had a smidgen of interest in a pursuit of Aaron Judge, and I just have a hard time seeing that changing. I think Nimo certainly becomes more likely. He's always been a high priority, and now there's just more room in the budget. So that's definitely something to look at in terms of the outfield. But a pursuit of Judge this late when the Yankees and Giants are hoping to close in on him and have gotten down the road, that I don't see.
Andy, what about guys like Chris Bassett and Taijuan Walker now? They're both free agents. We heard this week that the Mets had interest in bringing Chris Bassett back. Not as much about Taijuan Walker, but what do you think? Because the rotation now is Max Scherzer, and then you've got David Peterson, Carlos Carrasco, and Tyler McGill. But what about a guy like Bassett? Do you think a better chance now that Bassett is re-signed by the Mets?
Look, Garrett, so the Mets are looking for two categories of starting pitcher, and I believe they'll get one from each. There's that top of the rotation guy, deGrom, cross him off the list, Verlander, Rodon. Then there's mid to back of the rotation, and the prices for those guys have been pretty high. Jameson Taillon would be perfect for that category. However, he might command a deal of 4 years and $60 million, which, even though he's a terrific back of the rotation pitcher, that's an overpay. You look at some guys on the trade market, maybe like Marco Gonzalez from Seattle, maybe Bassett, but Bassett you probably put into that category with Taillon, where he's going to cost more than his production would project him to be worth. Those are the things the Mets are going to have to weigh. But I see them doing one of the two big guys and then more of a mid-back rotation guy. Whoever that shakes out as is going to, of course, be determined by negotiations, both with the agents or the free agents and with other teams. Billy Epler has been burning up the phones in trade talks for weeks now. So it's going to be two guys. Who those are, look, that's something that we're going to find out sooner than later now that this hot stove is really moving.
I would think this is going to be the first really big piece that's going to open up some other pieces to move here. And the winter meeting is getting underway out in San Diego on Sunday. So do you think the Mets are going to make these deals quickly now that Jacob deGrom is off the board? Again, going to the Texas Rangers, 5 years, reported $185 million. Do you think they will get deals done out in San Diego next week?
If not sooner.
Okay.
And now that deGrom has gone, we were expecting this to happen during the winter meetings. So basically, the winter meetings has begun. I'm sitting here in front of the Beatles. I'll be on a much nicer set in San Diego in like 48 hours. But here we are, folks. The winter meetings starting Friday instead of Sunday. Yeah, the Mets are going to be busy immediately.